Hello, and welcome to the Trauma Uncomplicated podcast, where we untangle the ways complex trauma formed you and your relationships and give you the tools to get your grounded, true self back in the driver's seat. My name is Christy Morgan, and I'm a relational trauma therapist. Well, let's jump in. You ready?
Deep breath, yeah. We were talking about all this heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, okay. First of all, I'm very excited about this because I think nutrition is one of those things where you hear a theory and then it gets debunked the next year and people are kind of
Mhm.
like, is this like, woo-woo stuff or is this real? And
Yes.
so I'd love to hear first about, your draw to this field
Mm.
of mental health, nutrition, and kind of like what you've seen as like the value in pursuing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really tied to my private story, right? My
Mhm.
personal story, which is postpartum anxiety.
Mm.
And even before that, having a major health crash. And when I say that, what I mean is my body was not making efficient energy for me. And so I would get out of bed and get ready to take off to work. And within an hour and a half to 2 hours, I was so exhausted, I would have to lay back down. And went, this isn't normal, right? I'm like
Mhm.
24, 20, 23, 24 at this point. Like that this is not okay. What is happening? Go to an allopathic doctor. He goes, great, we'll run some labs. So excited. Think that's going to give me some answers, only to come back in a week or two for him to shrug and go, well, there's nothing wrong with you.
Ugh.
Maybe eat more greens. And I almost laughed in his face because at this point I was on a raw vegan diet trying to
Oh,
help
wow.
myself. Yeah. So I was like, that is not the issue. That's not what's going on here. And that began this deep dive into what is happening. Fast forward, I found a wonderful practitioner. She ran my neurotransmitters. And the
Wow.
neurotransmitters that were through for fight or flight were off the charts. Like like so high we couldn't even see them on the chart. And
Whoa.
my calming neurotransmitters were bottomed out, were non-existent anymore. And so what she said to me was your body is constantly in a fight or flight mode, essentially. Another example that was really helpful for me to see is we tracked my sleep and
Mm.
saw that I was waking up 17 times a night. So
Whoa.
essentially, I was not entering into any rest restorative phase of sleep, which is so needed for the body for a number of things, but really just kind of as a broad statement needed for our body. So this is what got me on this path. And I saw a lot of improvement in changing my diet, getting out the processed foods, eating whole foods, eating what I call and what I talk about with clients is nutrient dense,
Mhm.
right? So we want to reach for nourishing foods. For example, if I'm going to eat a muffin for breakfast or steak and eggs, what is the impact that that's going to have on my body? Now, that's just one morning, but then if we look at doing that over and over and over again, or that becomes my habit, I'm just going to grab a granola bar and run out the door.
Mm.
That's over time going to have an impact on things like my neurotransmitters.
Yeah, wow.
Yes. So this was a lifetime, right? And I want to say too, I want to acknowledge that it's not just nutrition, right? There are other components happening, environmental components. There are the psychological components, having trauma or adverse childhood experiences in my past. All of this together combines to where we see these impacts on the body. So that's a little bit about like my story and why
Yeah.
this is so important.
How did you like draw that connection though from your neurotransmitters to food? Especially when
Yes.
the doctor was like, eat more leafy greens, and you're like, you have no idea how many leafy greens I'm
Yes.
eating.
Yes. So this was the second doctor, and she was
Okay.
actually a doctor that had been trained in typical allopathic Western medicine, left the system after 30 years because she went, this is not doing it, folks, right? If my job is to help people heal, this is not what's
Mhm.
happening in the system. And so she really helped make that connection for me. And first of all, seeing that the way that we typically deal with the body is emergency medicine. And emergency medicine is great. It's wonderful when there's an emergency. If I have a car accident, I'm in a car accident and I break my some bones and I have a concussion, friends, I'm not going to be just saying eat a steak, right? I'm going to say go to the hospital, get
Yeah.
your emergency medicine. It's really important. However, emergency medicine is essentially wartime medicine, and it is not built to heal the body necessarily. It's built to cover, kind of put a band-aid on things, right? To cover up the symptoms so we can keep going. And that's where I think these a holistic doctor, an alternative practitioners are really important. If what you're seeking is long-term change, we've got to step out of the system that we have in place right now. And she really helped guide me and point me in the right directions of some of the foundational steps of that. One resource I'll give, if this is piquing your curiosity and was really helpful for me, they're called the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Okay.
And Dr. Weston was actually, or Dr. Price was actually a dentist, which is a funny, yeah, caveat. And he traveled the world back in the 1930s and 40s and looked at indigenous cultures because what he was noticing was that they don't have cavities. They're
Hmm.
not dealing with like these cancers or heart attacks. This is not a normal thing like it was becoming in Western culture. And he was asking the question, why, right? Why is this happening? It started with teeth and then he started to see more and more. And he discovered a few key components that you can find on their website. I'll just touch on a few here. Obviously, non-processed foods is one, eating foods as straight from the earth as we can get them. High fat, right? Healthy fats was something that had changed in Western society. We started consuming processed vegetable oils, for example, margarine, right? Replacing butter with margarine. And we were losing particular vitamins from
Hmm.
these high quality fat and minerals from the high quality fats.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and another example, another great one, eating nose to tail.
Hmm.
So in our society and Western culture, we eat the muscle meat from animals.
Uh-huh.
We rewind even 50, 100 years ago, people were eating liver on a regular basis. My mom, yes, I know we all
My
cringe,
dad was
right?
fed liver growing up.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. And they I don't know about your dad, but my mom certainly complains, right? About
Oh yeah.
ooh, liver, yuck, yuck. Yeah. But it was no longer a norm
Hmm.
eating animal organs, the heart, the liver, right? These kinds of things,
Yeah.
using the bones to make
Mhm.
soups and broths. Those things now just get thrown in the trash, or we buy our nice packaged chicken breasts without
Right.
any other thing on it. And that's not bad, but there's other nutrients that are in these other parts of the animals that traditionally we use. We use the whole animal. And so
Mhm.
that's another really important component. So
Yeah.
this is what I started to dive into and learn about, and it had a profound impact on my health and my mental health, being able
Mhm.
to be motivated, being able to accomplish the goals that I wanted in the day. And then we
Mhm.
fast forward a couple years later. I'm married now and pregnant with my first kiddo. And he's born. And after his birth, whew, the anxiety. Now, at the time, I actually didn't even have language for it. Postpartum depression was just kind of the thing that was assessed for. So we didn't even have language for postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage. So even being in mental health, I didn't know that was a thing back then. And I just was like, well, I guess this is just what it is. I guess this is just normal. And really that created a lot of shame and
Mhm.
then created a lot of isolation. So I really pulled back from my community, from my support, which then of course spirals things even more.
Yeah.
But in this process, I was really blessed to find minerals.
Mm.
And that is maybe we'll say my most passionate point and what I always start with when working with clients.
Mm.
Um, Minerals are foundational to our health, meaning they are like some of the basic building blocks that then will have impacts on some of like the neurotransmitters is a great example. Minerals, we need balanced minerals and certain minerals for neurotransmission to happen,
Hmm.
right? Yep. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, not just that, every system, your endocrine system, right? Different hormones, be able to produce those in the amounts necessary. We need minerals.
Mhm.
Bone health, right? Calcium's the really popular one there. Everyone knows, right? You need calcium for healthy bones, but
Yeah.
heart health, healthy digestion, I could go on and on.
Mm.
Skin's another one. Okay, let's pause here. Skin and hair,
Hmm.
right? Women postpartum, what do they always complain about?
Hair
My
loss.
hair, yes, my hair is
It's
falling
all.
out.
Yeah.
My nails are brittle. My skin is having issues, right? Maybe it's wrinkling more easily now. Maybe you're looking really aged. Maybe it's acne. All of these things are tied back to mineral balancing. And wouldn't you know it, we lose at least 10% of our mineral stores during pregnancy. That's not even including, yeah, that's not even including the breastfeeding, right? But just in creating this baby alone, 10% of our minerals go into that source. So then we see, right, really profound effects on the body because of that process.
Wow.
So, yeah, so super important. That's what I started noticing. And then getting the minerals remineralized essentially
Mhm.
was just had outstanding impact in my personal life. And so that is what I've really dove into in the last 8 years of research and reading is, gosh, how do these different minerals impact our body, and what are the important ones, right? And so I always talk about and want to start with what we call the crucial four, and
Mhm.
those are magnesium, potassium, sodium, and calcium.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, calcium, typically people do okay with. And I want to be specific here. We want to aim for whole food sources. And the reason that is minerals are synergistic, meaning they work together, but they can also be antagonistic, meaning if we start getting too much of one, it will drive another one down.
Right.
Yes.
Mm.
So, for example, I do not want anyone out there to go start popping calcium supplements. That's not what I'm saying. However, we can find food sources, right, that are really high in calcium to support our intake there. Some great examples would be small fish, actually,
Mm.
right? So, sardines, anchovies in a can. Not a popular one. So,
Yeah, we're
I
like,
guess so.
oh.
Yeah, right. I don't want those. Some other options would be like some I prefer raw milk or raw dairy is ideal. Great cheeses, right? A good aged cheese is going to be high in calcium. Kefir,
Mm.
quality yogurt, right, is going to
Mm.
be really great for that calcium intake. So that's calcium. We also have sodium, which is, we all know salt. Okay, great. Salt. If you're craving salt, there's a
Mm.
reason probably for that. Uh, One thing I do often is I will just add a little bit of salt to my drink. Like, I
Mm.
love coconut water for the potassium.
Hmm.
And to balance that, I'll add a little sprinkle of salt and some lime juice in there.
Huh. Wow.
So good. Yes, so good. Very nourishing for the body. When I have that slump at like 2 or 3 p.m., that is what I'll hit my body with. Actually, the
Mm.
other day I did this one and it was so good. I did orange juice with a little bit of salt at the bottom and actually a mineral water.
Huh.
Mineral water is a has typically has a high mineral content. I used a German one. It's called Gerolsteiner. I've also used Topo Chico, which is another
Um,
great mineral water. You can find them at your stores. I actually got mine at Trader Joe's, but I've heard, even like the Dollar Tree. I've heard some people picking up mineral water at the Dollar Tree, which is
oh.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these combinations is giving your body a little hit of those minerals,
Mm.
and minerals literally help our body produce that light. That spark that happens in the neurotransmission is
Mhm.
light, and minerals are required for that process. Yeah, really cool
Amazing.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. The potassium is one that people are almost always 98% of Americans are actually deficient in potassium. Yep. Potassium is actually really easy sources as well that people love to hear. Christy, do you ever crave potatoes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That is your body signaling we need more
Mhm.
potassium on board here.
Mhm.
Yep. So, a really great, easy way that I love to get extra potassium in is sweet potatoes. I love a good sweet potato. Yes. Especially in the
Mhm.
morning with some butter and salt and pepper on there with my protein, right? And so I'll actually batch cook that. And I
Mhm.
will batch cook 4 or 5 sweet potatoes for the week, put it in the Tupperware. It's there, easy to grab when I, have a rushed morning.
Yeah.
Potatoes really high in potassium. I mentioned coconut water.
Mm.
Another one people do not think of, bacon.
Huh.
Bacon. Yep.
Yeah.
People love bacon. Why? High in potassium. Your body needs that potassium as well as B vitamins. B
Mm.
vitamins typically very energizing as well. Okay. That's what we need in the morning, right? We need
Mm.
potassium and those B vitamins to get going for the day. So
Mm.
I think it's so interesting that if we look at culturally what we consume, there are things in the foods we eat and the time that we eat them that really
Yeah.
corresponds, yeah, to our needs as humans.
It makes me think about, stress eating. And I think, in Western society, in America
Mhm.
specifically, we'll crave potato chips, we'll crave
Exactly.
chocolate, we'll crave
Exactly.
sweet and salty things. And maybe our go-tos for it aren't that nutrient dense thing, but it seems
Mhm.
like our bodies are telling us, hey, you need something.
Absolutely.
And I'm hearing you say, like, yes, go eat those potatoes. Maybe not potato chips, but there are other ways where you can get it in a very nutrient dense way. I feel like I've heard somewhere that dark chocolate has
Bingo.
is that potassium?
Magnesium. Magnesium.
Magnesium. Okay,
Yes.
magnesium.
Yep.
Yeah.
All chocolate actually. And so you'll notice too, you're spot on. I love what you're saying. When do women crave these things? When our body is needing that, when we're gearing
Yeah.
up to menstruate, right? And our
Mhm.
body is kind of oof, like there's just a lot going on to prepare
Yeah.
for that in physiologically. And so our bodies are needing more of those sources. And I love what you said. That's exactly what I help clients with
Mhm.
is they go, okay, I recognize that, right? Maybe I am reaching for the salty food or the potato chip that's fried in a bad oil. Well, okay, great. How can I change that though? Right? And what can I do? And that's literally what I walk people through is great. You recognize that you like potatoes, you like potato chips. Let's just get maybe one that's a higher quality, that's fried in avocado oil instead.
Mm.
Or let's reach for or find a way, or maybe even home make them,
Mm.
right? If you have the time and energy to do so, fry up some in your air fryer, right? With some lard or tallow. And they're delicious. They're even
Mhm.
better, right? Than the store-bought ones. Or if you want to do something a little healthier and you're up for that, let's batch make those potatoes so that
Yeah.
they're there and ready for you when you're craving that. So, yep, you're absolutely right. And I love what you're saying. It's just small shifts to
Mhm.
still get the foods that we love. Because food, like you said, food can also be emotional. And I don't want to strip
Yeah.
someone of every food they love. That is not the
Right.
goal or aim here. Let's just make those small changes so that we could still get those foods, but we're packing in more nutrients as we're doing that.
Yeah, and I want to like back up a little bit because I think that there are a lot of people who have trauma that have learned to cope
Mm,
in ways that control their intake of food or even deprive it. And
mhm,
I'm definitely one of those people where, I in high school had an eating disorder and then in college
mm.
was going through these really crazy like gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free
Yes. Yes.
vegan diets where it's like, okay, what's left, and
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
easy to
Mm,
get so controlled. And so I guess
yeah.
how would you approach someone who has this unhealthy
Mhm.
relationship with food and is now
Mhm.
hearing like, yeah, eat that bacon. Like, How do
Panic
you
mode,
approach
right?
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So some of it is education, right? So like when we talked about Weston A. Price, some of it is learning that, for example, like I love that. Let's take bacon. When
Hmm.
I say bacon, what comes up for you? What do you hear?
Fat.
Fat, right? And then what do you make
Yeah.
up, or what have you heard about fat?
I'm going to gain weight.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Fat makes you fat,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's actually a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Certainly, there are fats that are going to impact you to the various systems and slow
Hmm.
metabolism. So your metabolism is struggling, which is going to make you fat or put your body into stress. That makes you fat, right?
Hmm.
When our body is stressed, it holds on, right?
Hmm.
It says we can't let this go because we're in survival mode here. But
Yeah.
actually, in fact, good, healthy fats are very nourishing for your body, but also for your brain. Our
Mm.
brain is like 70% fat.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a
Wow.
lot of fat. So
Yeah.
we need that fat to nourish the brain. So again, to give some examples, um, fat from animals, lard, tallow, duck fat, um, butter, and ghee, these are healthy fats. They are
Mm.
in no way, shape, or form going to make your body store fat and hold on to fat, but they are going to nourish your brain and
Mm.
give nutrients to the systems that it is in dire need. So
Yeah.
bacon's a good example of a healthy fat, avocado oil,
Mm.
olive oil. Don't always recommend cooking with that because it has a pretty low burn point. And then when we burn it and it starts to smoke, it becomes rancid. So we
Huh.
just want to be careful with that one. So olive oil in our household, we try to use it for salad dressings,
Hmm.
right? Or sprinkling on veggies, right? If I want a good caprese, I'm gonna
Yeah.
sprinkle some olive oil on there. And then we use the animal fats or butter for cooking, avocado oil for cooking,
Mm.
for example.
Mm.
So the way that I like to talk about what you mentioned is like when we get so strict and rigid about food, is to talk also about our relationship dynamic there. And
Yeah.
I talk about nourishing wisdom.
Hmm.
And wisdom is this intersection between the logical mind and the emotional
Mm.
mind.
Hmm.
And where those two come together is where wisdom is found. So
Mm.
I'm not disconnecting from the emotion, which you kind of mentioned, and I've tried that too, right? I mentioned raw vegan earlier. And like, okay, I guess this will just help. And I just need to deprive myself of all the things I love. And I don't know about you,
Oh,
I was miserable.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
awful. Yeah, I was like,
We had
this
to
is
get a
not
wedding cake
fun.
that was gluten-free, dairy-free,
Oh,
sugar-free. Like what?
oh my
What? That's
gosh.
what kind of wedding cake is
Yes.
that? You know?
Yes. A very sad one. A very
Yeah.
sad one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, moving into, and I'll say too, it's not, unfortunately, it's not black and white. It's very bio-individual. So there might be a time period if your gut is in a lot of distress, you can't tolerate dairy. I'm not going to say to that person, go eat, go drink a glass of raw milk. Absolutely not. That would cause them so much
Yeah.
pain. So, like, let's build to that. And how can we create a system? So, ghee would be a first step, right? Even if people are struggle with consuming dairy, we can do ghee and then we can switch to butter and then we can start trying some of those yogurts and then to get to a place where now we can have the range of dairy, for
Mm.
example. So there are steps, but we don't want to, deprive ourselves of the joy of food, but we also know logically, right? We eating potato chips and chocolate bars is not going to make us feel good all the live long day. Right?
Yeah.
So where
Yeah.
can we find this intersection of, okay, logically, I want to get some foods in that are great for me. Here's a great example, Christy. Um, I have not been eating greens very much. Just haven't wanted them, haven't, crave. Usually typically like 3 times a week, I will eat some salad, some, green beans, broccoli, whatever. Um, I noticed that I wasn't. And
Hmm.
I started getting a little sore in my mouth, which is
Huh.
a sign of nutritional deficiency.
Oh,
And I went,
interesting.
oh, yep. I went, oh, okay, I'm recognizing I probably need to eat some greens. So we fried up some green beans in a pan with some bacon grease and salt and chili flakes last night for dinner. This morning I woke up, it's gone.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
Mhm.
just again, tuning in, noticing, paying attention to our bodies and what it is desiring, because that is also an epidemic in our culture of disconnection from ourselves.
I'm hearing a lot of, the way that our culture manages illness or manages diet is very much like
Mhm.
depriving yourself and withholding. And, as
Exactly.
you're saying these examples, I'm like, oh, that sounds good, and to
Right.
move into a place of like
Yeah.
nourishing, like, okay,
Yes.
I'm connecting with my body and I'm caring for it as I
Mhm.
would one of my kids, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, a sore is coming up. Oh, I know what to do for that. Let me nourish
Yeah,
it. Thank you for telling me what you
exactly.
need, and but
Bingo.
it's hard to do that if you don't have that connection with your body. And I think that's a huge
Yeah,
piece of trauma is we
so
become
true.
disconnected from our
Yeah.
bodies.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
rebuilding that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a healing process in there. And I love what you're saying. I'm going to connect it back to minerals because when our body is in duress, we burn
Hmm.
through minerals quicker. And
Oh,
then we're already probably deficient because our moms are deficient and we inherited their stores, right?
interesting.
Yep. It is
There's
really
like
fascinating.
generational trauma that is
Bingo.
connected to how
That's
you have like the type of mineral stores you have.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
literally
Yeah.
physically passed on in a
Oh,
sense,
oh,
right?
yeah.
Whoa, yes. Yeah. So, for example, my children, especially my first two, three, I started to get more on board with all of this. My first two, I really recognized, oh, magnesium didn't exist in my world. I didn't even know what magnesium really was. And so
Yeah.
they're going to be pretty deficient in magnesium. And so, with recognizing that, then how can I help bolster that in their diets?
Right.
Bath flakes, right? Them too, especially. I give them, an extra handful in their bath of bath flakes. They're my two that really reach for my magnesium-rich mineral waters. They
Mm,
will really ask for it. My daughter, especially, is obsessed with coconut water. So, as
yes.
much as I can let her indulge in that and drink it, they are unadulterated, right? By like we're saying, by that
Yeah.
trauma. So they know they're more in touch with what is it my body is needing and craving.
Um,
So it's twofold. It's healing the trauma while simultaneously getting the minerals in so that that process of healing can happen more readily and can happen more efficiently, right? So it's
you,
just twofold.
yeah, you've talked about nervous system resilience and using
Mhm.
minerals to build that resilience. What does that mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, for example, this is the example I kind of like to talk about. If we look at a really practical situation, probably everyone has had happen. You are running late, right? You are stressed. Oh my gosh, maybe your alarm went off late. Maybe you just lost track of time. You need to get out the door. You're trying to grab everything you need. You're going through your checklist quickly, making sure I have a meeting today. I need to look presentable, right? You're thinking about what do I need later in my day? All of this is happening. If you have kids like me, you're yelling at them, get your shoes on, right? Get your teeth brushed. This is a stress state. Okay.
Yeah.
Your body in this state is using up magnesium that is supporting the neurotransmitters, nerve transmission, and neuromuscular conduction. What that means is like as you're watching my hands move through the air smoothly, the ability to walk across the room effectively takes up magnesium. Okay. You'll use your potassium in order to think clearly, in order to use your memory and not get lost in that chaos.
Mm,
Uh, like if you watch a younger child, maybe there's so much going on, they get distracted
yeah.
by those things. We as adults have the brain capacity and development not to do that. But if we don't have adequate potassium, we're literally incapable of that
Mm,
without the potassium to help that process, for example.
yeah.
Calcium, uh, those who are extra irritable, maybe you get stressed really easily. You ruminate, and rumination is a therapy world term for staying stuck, right, on a thought and keep replaying that, replaying that, replaying that. Those are some signs and signals that there's not enough calcium or calcium isn't being able to get driven into the right places and be used properly, for example.
Hmm.
Sodium keeps your nervous system regulated so that in that moment of stress, I'm not sitting in the corner crying, right?
Mm,
I'm able to say, okay, right, we're gonna be okay. Maybe I'll do a nervous system regulation technique, like opening up my
yeah.
peripheral vision, right? Even the ability to think of those things requires a nervous system regulation, and we need sodium for that process. I think of things like emotional hypersensitivity, getting offended or triggered easily, perseverating on what others think of you. These are mental health examples of mineral deficiencies.
Wow.
Yeah. Did that
It
answer
just,
your question?
yes. And, I
Okay.
think what's coming up is just we can do all the therapy we want. We
Hmm.
can learn all the skills we want. But something I hear from clients is, like, okay, I knew the skill I needed to use. It's
Yeah.
worked for me in our sessions, but I
Yep.
just can't access it in the moment. And
Bingo.
it's like, okay, so we're going to pour all this money, time, and emotional energy into therapy,
Yeah.
but without the without the minerals to
Yeah.
make it even possible to use that stuff that we're learning and growing in,
Exactly.
like we're kind of throwing it all away. And
Bingo.
it's like, okay, let's give ourselves what we need to use the tools that we're learning.
Yeah.
And because in the real world, we don't have that therapist there,
Yeah.
helping us like really use that tool. They're not
Hmm.
guiding us. We're out there trying to do it in the real world.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're just doing it with a hand tied behind your back if you don't have
That's
the resources.
exactly right. That's exactly right, Christy. And that you just spelled it out so beautifully. That's why I do what I do, because
Yeah.
I recognize that within myself. I
Mhm.
saw this person ridden with anxiety,
Mhm.
unable, paralyzed by decision making, overwhelmed at the smallest things,
Mhm.
decisions, right? And I went, this is not me.
Yeah.
Who is this person, right? And when I got the minerals on board, I went, whoa, there she is again. There's that calm, happy, collected person, right?
Yeah.
I was able to reconnect with these abilities, like you said, that I knew I had always had, and suddenly they just felt inaccessible to me. And finding that was so life changing for me. And so, same thing in mental health
Mhm.
that can happen in physical health in
Mhm.
Western medicine is we separate
Yeah.
these things, and
Mhm.
they are not. That's not a way to treat. We have to integrate. It is required to
Mhm.
have the best healing possible. We have to be hitting the mental along with the physical and, in my opinion, the spiritual as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's interesting because I think a lot of people feel like, well, I this is a deficiency issue. I just need to go on medication. But I hear so much hope there of like, if medication's not for you, or like it's not the right thing, you've tried
Yeah.
medications and it's not working, like
Yep.
there are other options. And I'm also hearing from you that like you are not your deficiency. Like there's so much hope
Correct.
there in that you can do something. You're not your trauma, you're not your symptoms or your
Yeah.
reactivity. Like if you don't have the minerals to get through the moment, you're just ill-equipped. You're not broken.
Yeah.
And it's something you can do. Like
Yep.
you can do something about it, I guess is what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's
absolutely.
so much
And
hope
if yeah, I really
there.
love that too. Yeah, it's like I am not broken. There's just
Mhm.
something that has gone awry in my physical health that then impacted my mental health. And that is not a lifelong sentence. And we can get even extreme in this now because there's a great book out there. His name is Dr. Chris Palmer. He's out of Harvard. He's a psychiatrist trained by Harvard. And he came out with an amazing book called Brain Energy.
Hmm.
And what this book literally spells out, Christy, is that mental disorders are actually metabolic disorders, meaning
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, the way we consume and take that food and turn it into energy, that entire process has gone offline essentially and is dysfunctional, which then has a cascade of effects on our physical body. We talked about my neurotransmitters earlier. That is a prime example. My body was no longer able to create the energy that it needed for those neurotransmitters to regulate and fire at the appropriate times and in the appropriate amounts, for example.
Mm.
So we're talking about maybe, like low energy, maybe anxiety symptoms, maybe trauma, depression. He's talking about curing schizophrenia,
Wow.
curing bipolar with diet and nutrition. It's
Mm.
just so inspiring and it brings me so much hope. And it came at such an amazing time that I found this book and his research. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what I've been saying and I've known for 8 years. And now I have this amazing resource with there's so much literature over the years on this that's already out there, but he did a wonderful job of like packaging it all and putting it together. So that's a great resource too if this topic is interesting to you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious when it comes to how trauma impacts our bodies. What does trauma do to those metabolic processes?
Yeah. Yep. Great question. So trauma switches our body from what we call rest and digest
Hmm.
stage. And I've also heard it referred to as like the green zone, right? As you and I are talking right now, feeling safe,
Hmm.
feeling connected, feeling
Hmm.
calm,
Hmm.
right? That would be an example of green zone. That is ideally when I would consume food as well. That's
Hmm.
why little things like sitting down when you eat, eating mindfully, not having your phone in your face or being distracted by the television when you consume food. Why? Because that changes our consciousness and our awareness to the process that we are engaging in. Again, to bring back connection,
Yeah.
right? We are so used to disconnecting from our day-to-day processes, like eating, for example.
Yeah.
So we want to bring back that connection. And that would be rest and digest. When we are not in rest and digest, we are in a dysregulated nervous system. And
Mhm.
then a dysregulated nervous system has a cascade of effects on our body. Our our processes literally switch. I want you to think of if you are being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, would that be the time that you're going to go grab a sandwich?
No.
No, no, you would not at all. Your all of your resources are not focused on getting food in your body in that moment. So
Mhm.
things like your stomach acid will
Mhm.
change,
Mhm.
right? The energy is being diverted to a survival mode versus digesting food, for example, which in that exact moment is not a survival, right?
Mhm.
A necessity. So all of these different things change in our body. That is essentially what happens when we experience trauma
Mhm.
is we switch into this other state, this dysregulated state. And unfortunately, that, in the saber-tooth tiger example, is a short-term thing, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that
Mhm.
lasts 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we get away or it gets killed or whatever. But what happens, as we know in trauma, is it does not become just a small event.
Right.
It it is prolonged. That state
Mhm.
of duress is prolonged. And then when we're stuck in that, we're stuck then in these systems in the body that are not where we're supposed to be living full time. So
Mhm.
then that's how we get, for example, digestive issues,
Mhm.
right? People with
Yeah.
SIBO, Crohn's, right? Irritable bowel. Um, I can never say this one.
Diverticulitis.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what's happening is the body is stuck in this other stage. We're consuming the same things, right? Unknowingly, because we're disconnected,
Mhm.
right? And we're just shoving the food in and not even realizing that our body is not in a state to even digest and process this. And then over time, that wears down, wears down, wears down, right?
Mm.
And then we start to have bigger issues like leaky guts or, all of these other things that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So a little snapshot, yeah,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens.
No, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah. So I'm curious when it comes to like, okay, people are like, yes, I get this, Atara, like this is really important. I want to do something about it. I think it's easy for people to, especially with anything related to diet, to
Mhm.
do a complete overhaul of their diet menu throughout their week
Yeah.
and it's not sustainable and then they revert back. What
Yeah.
is like one small, simple way to get started that maybe is actually sustainable for people,
Yes.
especially as we're moving into the new year and people are already
Oh.
thinking about changes they want to make in their lives? Like, hey,
Hmm.
let's make a change that actually restores those mineral stores and
Exactly.
helps us be more resilient. What is
Yep.
that like one small step that you
Yep.
might?
Yep. And it's a little hard to answer. And here's where I will answer it, but here's what I'll say is it can be bio individual. So for example, if someone comes to me and they have a lot of anxiety, I might start with magnesium
Okay.
versus magnesium is calming, right? And so we want to bring that anxiety down versus someone who's coming to me with depressive symptoms.
Mm,
Well, they're already in that
yeah.
in that depressed, low energy state. We want something more energizing for
Okay.
that. But overall, what I'll say is if you can just start eating more whole foods.
Mm,
Get the processed foods out. A really easy, if you want a more guidance out there, it would be something like Whole 30 or
mm,
paleo. These are whole food based diets, right? And so getting that processed junk out, maybe it's just one meal a day. Maybe you're saying, okay, I'm going to start this month with getting my breakfast whole foods.
mm,
Maybe that feels easier for you, or maybe it's dinner, right? Whatever it is, and looking at, okay, what foods do I like?
mhm.
Right? What foods do I naturally, whole foods, again, do I feel naturally drawn to?
Yeah.
One example is steak. My spouse is an ADHD brain. He is obsessed with steak.
Huh.
That's not a coincidence. There are
Interesting. Yeah.
specific, yeah, minerals in steak that he is more deficient in. So that is a great way of tuning in and listening. If
Mhm,
I really love a good steak, listen to your body,
mhm,
right? And then incorporate that as much in to your meal and to your diet as you can. Or again, let's go back to breakfast. Eggs and bacon is a
mm,
great example. Make that then a staple breakfast. Maybe it's a high quality yogurt. You really love yogurt. I have yogurt a couple times a week, like twice a week
mhm,
for breakfast with my bacon or my sausage, right? My really,
mhm,
really high protein. And so that's how I'll intuitively listen to what my body needs. So that's
mhm.
what I'd say is start with one meal, focusing on one meal, start switching out for whole foods. We didn't even get into bread and carbs today. We could do that another time.
Maybe we
But
can cover that in the course, the
yeah,
embodied course.
oh,
Yeah, that would be
great
helpful.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Our bread and our carbs, essentially packaged bread is pretty detrimental to the gut and therefore the rest of the body. So staying away from that. So again, just replacing, how can we find if you love making sourdough bread, wonderful, much better for you. If you just want to cut the carbs out, then finding something to replace that and focusing a fruit. There you go. That's a great example of a whole
Mm,
food carb or those potatoes that I mentioned
yeah.
that we'll still get that hit of carbs and energy that we need, but it doesn't have the detrimental preservatives and additives, all that gunk that is
Yeah.
not great for the body. So that's what I'd say. And then if this is interesting to you and you want to jump on board and like dive into something, that's what I do with clients is I walk them through. I have a 6 week, a 12 week where we go step by step based on you and your needs. You meet with me not
Mm,
every week because sometimes people are like, I need another minute to implement this. Great. Okay, let's push it out a little bit. For example, if we hop off, I'm meeting with another client and this is her second meeting. And so we got her going on to magnesium. And now we're going to be talking about something energy and hitting some of those food things that she can incorporate to help her metabolism and mitochondria health.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I just feel like such a liftedness of like there's so much
Oh,
hope in this,
yes.
and
Yes.
I think to feel like you don't have to just decide that you're going to be stuck in your trauma forever and this is just how it is.
Yes.
But instead,
Yes.
like, hey, here are some practical things you can do. And like, they actually are realistic and they don't have to be so complicated. It's,
Yes.
just change up do a whole food diet or just
Yep.
find one meal every day
Yeah.
that you want to do this with.
Yep.
Um, Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you in the embodied course and to be able to offer some mental health nutrition guidance and just give people some resources to be able to, yeah, make make themselves more equipped to be able
Hmm.
to use the tools that they have.
Yes.
So so important.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
excited too. Something I'm so, so passionate about.
Mhm.
And like you said, the hope that is in there, I think
Yeah.
is so essential. And for people to go, it doesn't have to be this way,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't have another example I'll give is a client that had bladder issues.
Mm.
And she went, wait, what? I don't have to just live with this for the rest of the time that I'm on this earth. And I was like, no, like we can help with this. We can hopefully
Yes.
resolve this completely. And she's like, you're giving me so much hope. And I said, yeah, I will totally take that. I'm a hope dealer, and
Love
that is, yeah,
that.
that's my goal. And I'm just gonna doll out that hope as much as I can for people. So
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And like, your story where you shared earlier, like, oh, this is
Mm.
who I am. Like
Yeah.
when I'm not deprived, when my mineral
Yeah.
stores aren't deprived, like, oh, like this is me. I'm not this shell of a person I felt before or this anxious
Hmm.
person. Like that
Yeah.
was just me when I don't have what I need. And
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
it's just so unfair for us to judge
Hmm.
ourselves based off
Hmm.
of when we're in a deprived
There
state,
you go. Yes.
and
Yeah.
like, okay, let's look at ourselves when we are fully
Mm.
nourished and
Mm.
give
Mm.
ourselves the chance to really love the person we are because we
Yeah.
actually see who we are.
Yes.
So,
So well said,
yeah.
Christy. Absolutely. And this, this word, have you heard the word ikigai?
No.
Okay, ikigai is a Japanese word that essentially means the reason for getting up in the morning. And
Hmm.
ikigai has three, yeah, I love it too. Three guiding questions, if you will.
Hmm.
What am I good at?
Hmm.
What are my strengths? Right? What does this world need?
Hmm.
Yeah. And what do I love to do?
Hmm.
And this is my ikigai, right? This is my ikigai is like, whoa, yeah, because I wasn't capable of connecting with my goal, this goal that I'm working at right here of helping people in this way when I was in that deprivation state.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to even see outside of my own worry and my own anxiety. And so I love what you said. Absolutely. To get connected with purpose again, to get connected with ourselves again requires those tools and then physical change so we can implement those tools and connect with our
Mhm.
purpose.
Ugh, I feel like that's such a great way to end. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Amen. Right.
you so
Yes.
much, Atara.
And
Yeah.
and mic drop, right? We did
Yes.
it.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And if people wanted to be coached by you,
Mhm.
can you remind us a great way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love my social medias because there's a lot of great information on there that you can just implement yourself. So I'm on Instagram at atara.parkinson, and my Facebook business page is just my name, Atara Parkinson. Please also reach out through my email. I'm at ataraparkinson@protonmail.com. If you have a singular question or you're curious, I also have worked with people on one-offs. They just are like, bombard me with the information, and then I'm going to go implement.
Cool.
Perfect. I'm going to throw everything I can at you in an hour. You're going to write furiously, and then you're going to go implement as much as you can. Some people like the more slower, more
Yeah.
more support of the 6 or 12 weeks. But if that's you and you're a go-getter, that's a way we can do it as well.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so
Perfect.
much. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You are listening to the Trauma Uncomplicated podcast, where we untangle the ways complex trauma formed you in your relationships and give you the tools to get your grounded, true self back in the driver's seat. If you are ready to take that next step and dive deep into your healing, visit relationalhealingco.com, where we offer tools, resources, and personalized coaching to help you heal your trauma and thrive in your relationships. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or psychological advice. If you are in the United States and you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 to reach the National Crisis Hotline.